Today we have, the privilege to have with us Mercedes and Andrew. You might remember them from last year when they presented together with Blanca the exposition of Cecily Saunders. So they are back because they actually made the panels that are behind you with the story of Franz and Franziska, and they accepted to come here in the south of England to present the exhibition as well. So Mercedes and Andrew are married, have been married for 14 years. Andrew is from Durham, and Mercedes from Spain, Madrid. And a married couple encountered another married couple, Franz and Franziska, and they are here to present their story to us. So thank you for coming, and please.
Okay, thank you very much, Father Raffaele. So, is it? Yeah, better. Okay. Said, I'm from Durham, Methodist is from Madrid. If you don't understand something we say, please raise your hand. We're quite happy to, that was from my Durham accent. Raise your hand and we're happy to go over anything or answer any questions you might have. So we're very happy to be here, to be back here with you in Eastleigh. When Father Raffaele asked us to come and present the exhibition, we were very happy to come and do that for everybody this evening. Perhaps just to give you a little bit of context about where the exhibition comes from. You may have heard about something called the meeting of Rimini. Some of you may have even been there. So this exhibition is an abridged version of that of the exhibition that was held there. The meeting in Rimini had an exhibition a few years ago now, which was actually 40 panels. So we couldn't carry around 40 panels with us, but we did manage to condense it, shall we say, into eight key panels that we then presented at what is called the Oxford Convergence. So it's a smaller get-together of various exhibitions and speakers, etc. And so that's the exhibition that we've brought to present to you this evening. So the story of Franz and Franziska is obviously happens during the Second World War. We're not going to tell you this evening a story about war. When Father Raffaele told us that the theme of your festival was called to be peacemakers, we found that the story of Franz and Franziska fitted very, very nicely with that theme, because sometimes people living very ordinary lives, which we will hear about as we go through the exhibition, find themselves in very extraordinary circumstances and are called to make very extraordinary choices. And so we may not set out trying to be peacemakers. However, the circumstances that life throws at us sometimes puts us in front of some very, very difficult choices, and the choices that we make can, of course, influence the actions, the beliefs of others, and have an influence in such terrible circumstances as a war on whether there is a peaceful outcome to that or not. So we will take you through the lives of Franz and Franziska this evening, and tell you, of course, about their family life, what happened to them, and try to, of course, put them into of the.
So I would like to quote Tolkien, as a sentence of Tolkien that we believe is really explaining what this exhibition is, or the story of these people is. I quote, "What is really important is always hidden from contemporaries, and the seeds of what is to be are quietly germinating in the dark of some forgotten corner. The great part of truth is always hidden. I'm telling this because this is a really ordinary story of someone living a very ordinary life in a little village. So we are going to see now who they are. Who were they? Yes, Franz and Franziska. Franz Jägestätter was born in a little village called St. Radegon. It was a little village in the border of Germany, farmer village with 100 inhabitants in Austria, and he was born in 1907. And Franziska, his wife, was born in 1913 in a village really close to St. Radegun. To put you in a context, these little villages were near the border of Germany in Bavaria, and the closest village was the village where Hitler was born. And also, to put in context about the life of this couple, very, very close to this village, there was or there is a sanctuary of the Virgin Mary, where there are a lot of pilgrimage, etc. So it's really an area where people were really having a very deep faith, but very simple faith. They were there doing ordinary work, so taking care of the farm, of the animals, and the life was really marked by the bells of the church, the prayer, but also the circumstances of a normal life in which in the morning they were waking up early to do the things that they have to do in the farm, praying the Angelus, having lunch, going to feed the animals, so really doing that every single day. The particularity of this village also is that they were really concentrate in an area where they had not a lot of relation with what was happening outside, till of course the war came and also the invasion of Germany. So Franziska, in particularly, she was in a family, in a very Catholic family. She was born, and she was thinking when she was young to go with a friend to a convent because she wanted to be a nun. She was very attractive by the life of the nuns of a little convent that there was near there. So she went with this friend to ask the nuns, but the nuns said, I think you are very young, you need to reflect a little, so please come back in a year. And of course, that year was 1935, where France appeared in her life, so things changed just after.
Okay, perhaps a few words about Franz's life before he met Franziska. So he was a hard-working farmer's boy. He worked with on his family farm, and he was actually quite far from the church himself. Led quite a different life from the life that Franziska was living with her family. He was a young man. He was one of the first boys in the valley to have a motorbike. He was quite happy to be noticed, to ride around on his motorbike. He used his motorbike to go to other local villages, found the bars in the villages. Was quite a ladies' man by all accounts. Enjoyed a lot of things that young men with their motorbike and their freedom enjoy. To the point of there are records in some of a couple of the villages that he got involved with in a couple of brawls with other local boys. And he did, in fact, have a child before he met Francisca with a as well. There was a time when he decided that maybe he would look for something else. Life on the farm is not was not for him. So he went off to work in a mining town. Quite a hard existence, quite a brutal existence. He found himself in circumstances which were even further, shall we say, from the life of the church that was normal in his village, with lots of groups of men, again, lots of bars, lots of drinking, this sort of thing. But this really was a trigger for him in terms of reflecting, is this what my life is about? Is this making me happy? So he decided that this, in fact, wasn't the life he wanted. He went back to his village, started to work on the farm again, and at that point started to attend mass, started to go to church on a much more regular basis. He started to read a lot of scripture, a lot of theology. There are records from the library in St. Radegund that state that he was the person who took out the most theological books from the library. They have all of the list of all of the books that he took out, and he did in fact start helping at the local church as well. So from a start in his life where very, very different, he started to gradually discover that perhaps what he was looking for wasn't this what he thought was this freedom, this way of living that he had, but what was important in life for him was actually something completely different. And this relationship that he was building with God, as we will see, really shaped the decisions he would make later in his life.
And then they met. Franz and Franziska met in a farmer festival. So apparently Franziska was decided to help to tidy some green in a farm near there. There was a festival of farmers, and they met each other. And of course, they have a very interesting conversation. Apparently, she asked him if he was going to mass. And I think at that point he was starting, but I think also he wanted to please her, and he said immediately, yes, I normally go to mass. 6 months after, they married. Before married, they wanted also to take care of Franz's daughter. So together they went to see Teresa. Teresa is the mom of this baby that he had before, and both as a couple, they said, we can invite her to live with us, etc. But her mother said that she didn't want to live separate for her daughter, but they maintained the relation with her. This is to give you, an example of a normal life. They were really a family with their own circumstances, but there's something very, very particular in this couple also. So they married the 9th of April, 1936, at 6:30 a.m. in the morning, which is not a normal hour to be married. And why they did that? Because they wanted to go to Rome as honeymoon, to go to Rome in pilgrimage. So they have to take a bus, and that was organized in a way that they need to go very quickly. Their lives were already started, their lives together started in a very difficult moment also, because one of Franz's sisters died. But they decided that they need to be together in front of God, and that was the priority. So they celebrate the marriage. They married in the chapel of the village. They went to take the bus, and they traveled to Rome. So they were working after, when they come back, as a normal couple, farmers, working in the farm, as I mentioned before. They have 3 daughters, Rosalia, Maria, and Aloisa. The little one was born already when the war has started. And they had, again, a normal life in which they used to pray together as a family. And we know all of that, all the story that we are telling you, we know all of that because the letters they exchanged between them when he started to do the military service and all the story that we are going to tell you, they write every couple of days. So there are letters that are posted like 2 days. It's like there was no phone, there was no WhatsApp. So the way to be connected, it was to write sometimes things that are super simple, as this morning I went to try to find some food. I found sponson in the shop. I love you, and that's all. This particular thing, as I said, as I love you, it was very, very interesting because they were a couple of farmers, but they had a really way to communicate each other, and they were not shy to write in the letters that, and you could see in the story that they really love each other by the things that they were saying and expressing in these letters.
Okay, so as Methodist said, they were married in 1936. They had a reasonably quiet start to their marriage, but of course there was the rise of Nazism in Germany. By 1938, of course, the Nazis were moving into Austria. 1938 was the vote of the Anschluss. So the men were able to vote whether they wanted to accept the Anschluss. The Anschluss being the annexation of Austria as part of Nazi Germany. So all of the men of all of the villages were able to vote. Franz was the only man in his village of around, I think, 500 or 600 people eligible to vote in the village, the men of the village. He was the only one out of the several hundred people who voted against. So already at this point, we could see that he was prepared to set himself aside, to even become ostracized from the rest of the people who lived in his village because of what he believed in, because of his Christian belief. Because he couldn't comprehend, he couldn't bring together how Nazism and his Christian beliefs went together. The Nazis, well, and Hitler and what he was bringing, to some extent, was quite popular with the general population at that time, because they could see benefits in terms of the improved life that it was bringing. However, Franz, because he was doing a lot of reading, etc., he could see that there was a lot behind the Nazism that didn't sit well with him in terms of his Christian beliefs. And so, as I say, he was prepared to go against all of the other people in his village, all of the people who he'd grown up with, the families who they lived with. They were used to helping each other out, but he was quite prepared at that time not to go along with that he just did not feel comfortable with at all. So that was in 1938, the vote. After that time, some military training period started. All of the men of the village, regardless of how they voted at that point, ought up to start military training. Franz did go for the military training. There were a couple of sessions that he did for that, a few weeks away at each time. However, each time he came back, because he was a farmer, and of course the work that the farmers were doing, growing the food for the ever-growing army, was considered as an essential skill. So at that point, to an extent, he was quite protected for not having to get too involved in the war itself. He had a task which was considered a critical activity. However, of course, as the war went on and more men were required on the front, this is when everything changed for him.
So, as Andrew mentioned, he did the military service with Nazis. It was cold, thinking he was going to come back with no problem because of his duties. Before that, short before that period, in January 1938, he had a very interesting dream. So in one of the letters he's telling that he saw people in a train were going to a place that for him was like hell. And he wanted to shout, "Go out from that train, go out from that train." So for him, that was something that happened in his dreams, but had an impact in what he was already seeing. He was very informed of the things that were happening because, again, as Andrew mentioned, he was reading a lot of things. So that was a point of inflection also for him to do the path that he did. And what is interesting here is also the way Fanny accompanied him in this. Because imagine she was a woman with 3 kids in a farmer. Her husband voted no in a referendum, being the only one voted no. Probably others voted yes also because they were scared already, thinking maybe there are going to be problems if we say something differently. And she was behind him, supporting him, in a point that is starting to be very interesting also in her life. Franziska started to understand that there was a domain where she could not enter in her husband conscious. And that's something that, I mean, if there are married couples here, you will understand, and I understood when we were preparing the exhibition, there's always a point that you cannot go into your husband or your husband into your mind. That's something private that you are not going to keep it or even to grasp. But she respected, even though it was difficult for her because of the circumstance, but she decided to accompany him in the path that he was following. He went, of course, to the military service, but he was very accompanied by the saints, 2 particular saints. One of them was Santa Teresita of Lisieux, that she was started to be known in that moment, of course, because she was at the beginning of the First World War, but she was already starting to be known because of the miracles, etc. And she was really accompanying him in this, and he was quoting her very often. In the 23rd of February, 43, it was the last time he was called to order. He was in San Radegun, coming back from the military service, and in that moment, he was called again to come back, and probably he understood he was going to come back to fight in the war. And there, it was his decision to say, I'm going to go to say that I'm not going to go anymore because I'm not okay with what the Nazis are doing, and this is against what God is telling us to do, and I cannot go anymore there. So that was the start of his own Via Crucis, and that was in February, and on Saturday 27th of February of that year, 43, he was arrested and imprisoned.
Okay, so as Methodist said, so after, let's say, several years, it wasn't just an impulsive decision. He had gone through the military training, etc., but he just couldn't bring himself to sign the oath. To those who went to fight in the actual military action had to sign an oath to pledge allegiance to Hitler, and he could not bring himself to do this. He was given many opportunities, both before he went to prison and even when he was in prison. He was visited by priests, by senior military people, trying to give him the opportunity to just sign the paper. That's all you need to do, and this will all be over for you. But he couldn't bring himself to do that. They even tried to convince him just to go off and do some light sort of medical duties, helping with the medical people, but it still required him to sign this pledge of allegiance to Hitler, and he couldn't bring himself to do that. So after a few months in prison, he was executed by guillotine in August, 9th of August 1943. He had, while he was in prison, continued to write several letters to Francisca, which were letters which were full of hope, full of forgiveness, and expressed his trust in God. And so in fact, these letters have been compiled into a book, which I believe is translated into English. Yes, I'll read a couple of quotations from the letters. So it's, "Let us rejoice with the church. What could be more joyful than the fact that Christ has risen again, conquering death and hell? What a consolation it is for us Christians to know that we need no longer fear death. It would truly be a joy to spend my last days in the embrace of a happy family. But if the good Lord has decided otherwise, then so be it. It is a joy to suffer for Jesus."
You can, of course, see or understand how his faith was really strong in a way that he decided to make peace by deciding not to go to war, even giving his life. The important point also is that that was a decision, that it was a personal decision. And you can see also when I'm going to lead you in Francis's life after this, that he didn't judge and she didn't judge the people that decided in his village to go to war. For him it was, I'm not going to do it, but he respects the situations of others. So because the strong belief in himself of this conscious, of this private conscious that is your relation with God, and you have to decide yourself. I'm not going to use you. So Francisca, of course, she lives her own Via Crucis after when Franz was executed. Imagine she's in this village where people, some of them are scared, and of course, if you are scared, you maybe are not going to talk with her in case you are appointed against the Nazi. She has little girls that they were very little and naughty, and they were difficult to manage. In the letters, you can see that when she was sharing with him, you have to come back because I cannot manage them. They are like very wild, etc. So imagine the situation of Francisca there, suffering a lot, but with this also mindset of not judging anybody. There were poor people at that moment that came sometimes to ask for food, and she was not judging if they were people supporting the Nazis or not. She shared whatever she had. She was also accompanied for Franz's mom, that she was sick, but she was living with her. So that was a support that she had. But of course, they were really alone. There are two important quotes that in the letters can give you a hint of how she understood even later what Franz has done and how she embraced that. There's a moment in which at the end, one of the last minutes, because she was able to see him the day before he was executed, and she said, "You looked at me and I understood how simple life was. Then you, whatever you decide, whatever you do, I will be with you always. Do what is right," which is very impressive. Franziska lived 100 years. So imagine, she died with 100 years. So she was really living the main part of her life without him, but with a big presence of him in her life. And the last words that she mentioned, she was able also to participate to the ceremony of beatification in the Cathedral of Linz and her last words that are quoted are, "It has been a long Good Friday, but now I feel closer to Easter." Because of course, her life was very difficult, and also with this thing of embracing the decision of her husband, but of course, I imagine she could have moments of, thinking, why you have done that, why you leave me alone with that, why didn't you sign the paper that you have to sign. But 100 years, so a lot of years having this, and the last words, I feel closer to Easter, no? Because she understood she would be with him at that moment.
Okay, but just to add what Mercedes said, the beatification didn't come until 2007. So of course there was the time, first of all, immediately after the war. And as you can imagine, Franziska continued living in the village that she had lived in, with lots of people, lots of families that had lost fathers, that had lost sons. So it wasn't that the end of the war came, peace came again, and everything was fine. The family was still ostracized at this point. However, as the decades went on, people started to realize that perhaps that the heroes were not necessarily those who had died in the war themselves, but it was those who were brave enough to have the courage to stand up for what they believe in. However, this did take some time, and it wasn't until, I think, 1997 until Francis' conviction was actually overturned. And then, as I mentioned, 2007, that Pope Benedict approved Francis' beatification, and then he became known as Blessed Franz Jägestätter.
So how we know them? Because of course I have to tell you that I didn't know them before we prepared this exhibition. So I really started to be known. The first thing, thanks to a film that appeared in 2019 by Terence Malick, that is called A Hidden Life. I don't know if you have watched this film, but I really recommend you to watch this film. when we were looking at all the things that we have done to prepare the exhibition, etc., I read a quote from a filmmaker saying, it shows the human with such depth that the divine can be seen. And it's really that you are really in front of a prayer, because it's a film that is so images of the countryside, the field, and you see their lives, and you really can sit down and see like a prayer. It's very well done, this film. But he started to be known in 1960 in the States, in the United States, because these letters arrived through a German lady called Erna Putz that managed to translate all the letters. So there are books. I bring the Spanish version to show you, but there's an English one translated in different languages. And in the 60s, these letters that are called letters and writings from prison, they were taken like a symbol of the peace movement in the United States, because this man really was a peacemaker in the way he faced circumstances. Also, it's important to quote that it was mentioned the first time in the Second Vatican Council, also because of the question of the conscience. So when they were discussing this subject in the Second Vatican Council, someone mentioned this man from Austria. So little by little, the story is appearing, and really, when you deep dive into what they were living, you are really attached, and to know more and more about them. So we have now a video that is a 7 minutes video that was done for the exhibition, where you can see Erna Putz talking about them. You can see also the Bishop of Linz that did in Linz was done the beatification, and you can see Maria Jägestätter, one of his daughters, that she's talking in the film, in the little film. It's really moving. There are scenes about the beatification where you can see actually Fanny, Francisca, taking the body, or for offering for the beatification, and you can see the house, etc. Is with subtitles, because it's totally in German, but it's with subtitles in English, so you can now watch it.
In den 70er Jahren war die Rezeption von Franz Jägerstätter sehr kontrovers, aber es war dann grundsätzlich die Frage, ja, hat er nicht seine Familie verraten? Was ist der sittliche Weg? Was ist die sittliche Entscheidung im Angesichte Gottes in der damaligen Zeit gewesen? Und es war die Frage, ja, ist er diesen Weg als Sturkopf gegangen oder als psychisch nicht ganz normaler oder als Zeuge des Glaubens, als Märtyrer? Das ist die Entscheidung Gott oder Götze, Christus oder Führer, Heiliger Geist oder Ungeist. Das heißt, im Grunde genommen hat Franz Jägerstätter das Taufbekenntnis, ich glaube und ich widersage.
Wir sind gerade hier in diesem Haus, in dem Franz eingesperrt war. Hier in diesen Zellen war er. Und die Gefangenen wurden sehr schlecht behandelt. Es gab Folter. Und er hat begonnen zu zweifeln. Und dann hilft ihm Franziska. Sein Gebetsleben wird intensiver, aber in der großen Krise, der Haft am Beginn, da stärkt ihn die Erfahrung der Liebe und des Glücks mit Franziska. Hier ist das geschehen. Franziska hat das Religiöse in die Beziehung gebracht. Sie haben zusammen gebetet, Bibel gelesen und da ist das Glück eigentlich noch größer geworden. Er hat einmal zu ihr gesagt, ich habe mir nicht vorstellen können, dass Verheiratetsein so schön sein kann. Und Franziska sagt, wir haben eins dem anderen weitergeholfen im Glauben.
Und das ist, glaube ich, das Entscheidende, die große Tat, die große Entscheidung, auch im Angesichts des dämonischen, barbarischen Systems. Das heißt, es gibt ja viele Formen von Manipulation oder es gibt Kräfte, die kolonisieren wollen, die unsere Seelen besetzen wollen. Franz und auch gerade Franziska Jägerstätter hatten ein großes Gespür für die Bedeutung des Kleinen und der Kleinen. Das heißt, er wusste zum Beispiel, wenn ich den Nazis den kleinen Finger gebe, dann habe ich bald meine Hand verloren und auch mein Herz. Er hat nicht einfach gesagt, einmal ist keinmal oder das ist ja nicht so wichtig oder auch nicht zum Beispiel, auf mich kommt es nicht an. Natürlich könnte man sagen, an diesen Kleinigkeiten wird die Welt noch nicht weder kaputt gehen oder heil werden. Und doch.
Ja, da gibt es mehrere Soldaten, die ich kennt habe, die dann gekommen sind zum Grab und geweint haben, weil sie nicht diese Kraft hatten, so wie der Vater. Es gibt solche Leute, die kommen, viele von Burghausen kenne ich einen. Und von München sind immer Leute gekommen, die das bewundert haben, was der Vater gemacht hat und sie selber nicht diese Stärke gehabt haben, Nein zu sagen. Warum die Leute hierher kommen? Aus verschiedenen Gründen, denke ich, vielleicht, falls wieder sowas kommen sollte, wo sich die Leute dann entscheiden müssen, sie holen sich hier Ratschläge, denke ich. Die wenigsten sagen das, warum sie kommen. Es war einmal einer da, der hat sein Opa, der hat das Gegenteil gemacht und der war bei der SS und er muss auch damit fertig werden. Es gibt die andere Seite. Und viele suchen dann ein Vorbild für die Ehepartner. Die einen kommen nach der Hochzeit gleich hierher und wollen mehr wissen über Franz und Franziska Jägerstätter.
Franziska hat mein Leben sehr beeinflusst, mein Äußerlich, aber auch meinen Glauben. Was ich noch sagen wollte, wie ich die Schriften von Franz transkribiert habe, in die Maschine abgeschrieben. Und mich hat nicht so bewegt in meinem Leben, keine Exerzitien. Ich habe gedacht dann am Ende, ja, ich möchte auch heilig werden. Also so tief hat mich das bewegt, seine Schriften.
Wie haben wir die Seligsprechung erlebt? Ja, es war eigentlich sehr, sehr gut für uns. Und es war sehr gut. Also uns hat es große Freude bereitet. Für uns war er sowieso ein Heiliger.
Ein christliches Martyrium, das geprägt ist letztlich von Glaube, Hoffnung und Liebe, vom Geist der Seligpreisungen. Aber den Glauben zu leben, die Hoffnung zu leben, Hoffnung zu vermitteln und für die Liebe einzustehen, das, glaube ich, ist schon auch etwas, was uns gegenwärtig aufgetragen ist. Das ist ja auch die Taufberufung oder auch das Taufbekenntnis zu leben, das ist unsere Berufung. Wo das hinführt, das haben wir selber nicht in der Hand.
Und Glaube, Christusbeziehung ist großes Glück. Das Franz sagt ja das, er möchte die kleine Zelle nicht mit einem halben Königreich tauschen, wenn er dafür ein Stück des Glaubens geben muss. Ich finde, Das ist auch Glück und Erfüllung des eigenen Lebens. An Franz und Franziska sehen wir, dass Glaube, Martyrium, also auch das Leben für den Glauben zu geben, im letzten Glück ist, Erfüllung.
Ich habe an der Entscheidung meines Vaters nicht gezweifelt. Ich denke, er wäre nicht glücklich geworden, wenn er das nicht gemacht hätte. Die war richtig.
That brings us to the end of this evening's presentation. As I said at the beginning, that the lives of ordinary people who found themselves in extraordinary circumstances. And it does teach us that courage is not always to be found on the battlefield. Sometimes courage means really standing up for what we believe in, even when we find ourselves sometimes standing alone. And it does remind us that love, faith, and conscience can be far, far stronger than fear itself. So we would invite you to have a look at the panels that you can find at the back of the room this evening. There are some very nice quotations in there from some of the letters. If you'd like to know even more, as we said at the beginning, you can have access to the 40 panels of the original exhibition by scanning the QR code here. So we'd just like to thank you all for coming this evening.
And if you have questions also, we are open to questions, if we can answer.
So there is a time now for some questions. If you would like to make them, I ask maybe Simon to come here and to help taking the microphone around. Anyone would like to? Questions? Yes.
Thank you both very much for such a powerful retelling of the story. It's amazing. I'm just interested to know, how did the process begin by which the conviction was overturned?
I don't necessarily have all of the details of how that happened. I do know that even the leaders of the church in the region where he lived, first of all, of course, they had to think about all of the families that had lost their fathers, sons, etc. And so some of them were quite strongly against the fact of what France had done. But I think it was just over a matter of time, and when people started to really come to terms with what he had done. There was a book written by a gentleman called Gordon Zahn. It was called In Solitary Witness, which was published in 1964. So, and I think this was maybe the start of when there was maybe a turning point that looked into lots of Franz's letters and the communication with his wife that really triggered a flip, shall we say, in the way that his actions were thought about. But it was, as you say, quite a number of years after the war that happened.
And Franziska was asking, as a widow, to have a pension when he was executed, and she had not this pension because she was considered a deserter. So she was considered as someone that has done something wrong, and she had not this pension and this help for the state. So it's really much after when probably these movements of peace in the States started to bring a bit of different conscience, and that bring the moment of this recognition.
Any other questions? Gentleman here.
Thank you very much, and a wonderful presentation, may I say. I think thoroughly enjoyable. Is it known that although many turned the other cheek against the Nazis, did he actually find any friendship with people or with anybody other than Franziska who shared his view in opposition and to the regime? And did he have friendships that he could friends he could talk to about his own feelings?
I think from what we can see, actually, if you watch the film, there are some quite interesting scenes in the film, that even people amongst the military themselves, they wanted to give him the opportunity to really sort of change his mind. There was not an immediate sort of backlash to his decision as such. So I think people did understand why he was doing what he was doing. I think that a lot of the difficulties that him and Franziska faced were a lot from the people in his own village, because as I just mentioned, that a lot of these families, they had sons, they had fathers that had gone off and been killed in the war. So these were people who were directly concerned by this. But I think there were other people around him, priests, other people in the military, who wanted to give him every opportunity. So he wasn't sort of cast out by these people immediately.
And he was very close to the priest of his village, that he was also imprisoned a couple of times. He was not killed, but he was imprisoned because he manifested his opposite thought against the Nazis. And also there was a friend of him doing the military service that accompanied also him in this, in a very discreet way, that it was Rudolf Meyer. And there's a very nice story about him also, because in the letters with Francesca, he was telling her about this friend from his childhood that he met there. And it was a support also for him, of course, because he was not alone, physically alone. He had also some friends, and this particular one, he was very fond of being with him, even though he decided to go to the war. But he was accompanying him. Yeah.
Do you know what his children went on to do with their lives?
No, I have no details on information. I know that that's Maria, that is the second one, and there was an older one and a third one, but it's not telling anything in detail in the story. I suppose they were having normal lives, but I don't know anything more. I cannot tell you.
We can leave you to go and look at one up yourselves.
There are a lot of things. I find now a lot of things in internet about them, because they are very, very known now, especially after the film of Malik. Yeah.
Linked to the previous question, there was no one else who renounced to go to war on the basis of his conscience in Austria, because it is a strong Catholic country. So he was the only one who renounced to go to war in that war.
I'm sure there were more, Father Mario, but he's the one that has at least become the best known, I think. But
I think it's thanks to the letters. The point here is that he was having, she kept, of course, because she lived 100 years, and she kept every single letter of him And really, the book is amazing because you have, it's like, you can imagine someone texting WhatsApp, no? When you are traveling and you want to know how are you, I'm arrived to the hotel, the things that, conversations that we have, ordinary couples, they have that, sometimes very short text, talking about life, but then, you started to see how the journey to this martyrium is arriving, and they are deeper and deeper, and they are very, very impressive. And because of that, this lady, Erna, that met Francisca and asked her, can I type this letter with my machine, and ask someone to publish? They found an editor and they published. And it's because of that the book arrived to Malik, and he decided to do the film. So it's really like that is known. So probably there are other people, because that's the point of this conscious, no? That probably there were other people. I mean, there are a lot of stories about people fighting, no? Like the ones of the young people of the White Rose, the association, an association that they were also writing things. Yeah, so there are a lot of little stories about the opposition to the Nazism.
I'm just wondering, in the process of beatification, canonization, have any miracles been attributed to him that we know of?
I imagine, but not aware. There's no place where you can find what reality it was. What is mentioned all the time is this conscious, this faith, a strong faith, and being close to Christ and loving Christ more than his own life. That was the path to the beatification. But there's no quotes about what was the miracle that the church made recognize. Yeah, if someone find it, it will be interesting.
So from your presentation, and thank you very much, looks like these people have had an impact on your life. So I was wondering, it's not if there is in these people meeting, getting to know them, if there is something you want to mention about your own personal experience, if you changed, had an impact on it? Yes, or in.
Thanks for that easy question. The first thing I would mention is it really made me consider and think about my own faith and what I would be prepared to do in the name of my faith, and would I sign this letter that would be let's say the easier way out, or would I be able to stand, by my faith? And I have to say the question sort of frightened me a little bit. It really made me think very, very deeply about it.
For me, the first thing is to realize that the friendship is always what is opening and making your faith growing, because it was a friend of us who a few months ago contacted and said, I need your help. We would like to do a presentation of this exhibition, that we saw it, Andrew and I, when it was in Rimini, in Italy, but it was another more. But this friend said, I need your help. It's a very nice thing. And we really said, okay, yes, we help you, even though, it was another thing to do with a lot of things that we do. But it opened an horizon that this was bigger than what I was expecting, no? And that's for me the first thing, like, as I experienced to say that following the friendship of, friends, etc., is what is bringing you to grow your faith always. So that's the first thing. After, of course, being, seeing this married couple, you, in a sense, you would like to have that faith that I have not. I mean, it's very impressive because someone is asking me, you would like to die for God, and you say yes as a poetic thing, but then I would be scared of all the things that happen. But as a desire of living the life, praying together, because that, brings everything after, no? That's what I take from the work we have done in the exhibition. Also realizing that you cannot possess the conscience of the other, and that, you are one together, but in front of another that is bigger than you. So whatever he has in his mind or I have in his mind, if is the relation with God that is bigger than us together. So that's also something that I have learned about the journey with this exhibition.
Just want to answer I don't know who asked about the miracle. Who asked about the miracle? Okay. Just for the beatification, because he was killed, he was martyr, he doesn't need a miracle. To become a saint, however, you need one miracle. Okay? Just because he was a martyr.
Thank you.
Anyone else? So thank you very much, really, for this presentation. It was very rich and thought-provoking. I would like maybe to give 3 windows that are open now for us. And I think that the first window is the topic of the festival, that is called to be peacemakers. And the topic of the peace, I think, is in the life of Franz and Franziska, in the way that I think where can we find peace when there are difficult circumstances around us, like wars and so on. Well, they found peace in themselves. And so Franz and Franziska, really, they were able to face difficult circumstances because there was calm and peace in them, in their heart. They knew what the truth was, and in following this, they were in peace. So the peace is, first of all, not outside, but inside. If we have a peace in us, then we can spread it all around. The second window that I think you said very well is the topic of the decisions. So our faith really, in some way, leads to a different life, a hidden life, but different. And so I remember when you were speaking the sentence of Saint Peter in the Bible, when he says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this present world, but renew and change your mind." I think is a perfect description of the life of Franz, that didn't conform to the pattern of that world, but renewed his mind, first of all. And then the third window that is, I think, in front of us is the topic of conscience. And here we are in the land of John Henry Newman, that was one of the most important saints that we have here, that spoke a lot about conscience. So that bad and good, what is good and what is bad, is not something written outside in stones, but is written in our heart. So if we go in us, we find the good and the bad because it's in our conscience. And this is another important, window that is open for us. So thank you very much to Mercedes and Andrew for coming this evening, and thank you. Thank you. That is our appreciation.